Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta and you're watching Basis Points, where we dive deep into the numbers and the stories that drive our economy and shape our world. The headlines. The 6.3 trillion peso budget for 2025 is ratified, but big questions and objections still loom large. Political tensions heat up between the country's top two leaders, worrying the Filipino-Chinese business community. Once again, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump makes waves as Time magazine's Person of the Year. First, let's take a quick look at the financial markets. Wall Street closed lower on Thursday as investors weighed key economic data ahead of the Federal Reserve's highly anticipated Federal Open Market Committee meeting next week. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 both lost 0.5%, while the Nasdaq gained 0.7%.
We're having a roughly flat to down day with regards to the major market indices. That's primarily being driven by the fact that even though it's a bit of a slow news day, we did have the PPI results that came out this morning that did note a little bit higher of a growth in those wholesale prices than what is expected. I mean, coming off the tails of CPI, which was from yesterday, which is a much more favored and regarded report.
Over in Europe, markets edged slightly higher on Thursday. London's FTSE and Germany's DAX both gained 0.1%, while France's CAC 40 ended flat. Here in the Asia-Pacific region, markets opened lower, slightly lower. Japan's Nikkei 225 down by more than 0.5%. South Korea's Kospi also down. South Korea's Kospi is flat, while Australia's S&P ASX 200 is lower by 0.6%. Congress ratifies the proposed 6.3 trillion peso national budget for next year, and it's now awaiting the president's signature. However, some lawmakers expressed frustration over the speed of its approval, raising concerns about a possible lack of transparency in allocating the funds. Agatha Gregorio has the details.
There is a motion to ratify said conference committee report. Are there any objections? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. All those in favor of the conference committee report, say aye. Aye. All those against, say nay. The ayes have it. The said conference committee report is hereby ratified and approved.
Both chambers of Congress ratified the proposed 2025 national budget at more than 6.3 trillion pesos. Approval was swift over at the House of Representatives, but senators had a long discussion over various issues, including the removal of funding for PhilHealth. Senate Minority Leader Coco Pimentel says a portion of the taxes on sugar-sweetened beverages, alcohol, and tobacco should be given to PhilHealth according to the law.
I'm just pointing this out. Now we may be inviting another case before the Supreme Court because under the theory that the GAA, if we pass this, is amending indirectly the sin tax law.
Pimentel and Senator Risa Ontiveros both voted no to the ratification following Pimentel's questioning over the PhilHealth budget. Some senators spoke out against the decision after the approval of the budget in plenary.
Subsidy from the national government may still be needed to implement necessary reforms and improvements in its benefit packages. Huwag naman zero budget, sa huli, ang mga mahihirap na pasyente na naman ang kawawa dyan.
Hindi po mawawala ng benepisyo ang ating mga kababayan. Meron pong 600 bilyon na pwede nilang gamitin dito. Tapos ang DOH mula sa NEP tumaas ang budget ng 30 billion. Yung pagdating naman sa AFP, tumaas ang budget nila ng 29 billion from the NEP.
Some congressmen also expressed their opposition to the ratification.
While again, tama, nakinatasan natin ng sobrang laki ang budget ng OVP. Pero ngayon po na tingin natin hindi katiwa-tiwala na bigyan pa rin ng pondo na pwedeng magamit for politicking and actually for services na hindi din naman talaga naging efficient doon ang Office of the Vice President. Kung kaya pa nga, Mr. Speaker, bawasan pa ang pondo.
The OVP budget was reduced to 733 million pesos from over 2 billion that was proposed. Gabriela Party List Representative Arlene Brosas also slammed the decision to approve the report when some lawmakers have yet to review it properly. Brosas adds the report was ratified just minutes after she received her copy. Despite these issues, only the signature of the president is needed so that the budget for the following year may be implemented. Senate Finance Committee Chairperson Grace Poe earlier mentioned she expects the chief executive to sign the bill into law by December 19. Agatha Gregorio, BNC.
Filipino-Chinese business leaders sound the alarm, saying political tensions in government could push foreign investors away. Their message to the government: resolve these issues quickly to protect the country's economic stability. Sujin Kim has the details.
Political instability and growing tension in the Philippines are sounding alarms among the Filipino-Chinese business leaders, who warn these issues could undermine investor confidence and stall the country's economic growth. With the 2025 elections fast approaching, they emphasize the urgent need for stability to maintain the inflow of foreign investment and protect the country's reputation as an investment hub.
If the international news in the Philippines is mostly about military exercises and territorial disputes, that might scare away some foreign investors.
We want politically to be stable, to be peaceful. Whatever tension is projected, is perceived, mawawala yung mga foreign investors. And that is not good for business. Ang mga negosyante, masyadong sensitive yan, masyadong takot. May konting gulo, aalis na yan. Kasi marami pang pwedeng puntahan.
Beyond political tensions, business leaders are also grappling with issues such as high electricity costs.
Minsan yung mga malalaking industry hindi makakapasok because they cannot get enough power. Power is always a problem.
Despite these challenges, the Filipino-Chinese business community remain optimistic about the Philippine economy, also with the support from government to foster a business-friendly environment.
The advantage of the Philippines, we have relatively young population compared to our Asian neighbors. So there's more dynamic growth in the Philippine consumer spending. So maybe food, clothing, consumer spending, lifestyle, all this will be very good.
In the world, Asia is now the growing region in terms of economy. Very optimistic about the economic outlook because the government is doing some programs, good programs to encourage foreign investment.
They also emphasize the need for stronger cooperation between the Philippines and China in time for the 50th anniversary of China-Philippines diplomatic relations next year. Sujin Kim, BNC.
Here's an idea. Listing state-owned companies on the Philippine Stock Exchange could revitalize the country's sluggish stock market. That's according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD. In its capital market review of the Philippines, the OECD says listing companies like Land Bank of the Philippines and Food Terminal Incorporated could expand the country's public equity market. It notes that state-owned enterprises in other countries make up a significant portion of market capitalization. Listing these companies could also improve their performances by subjecting them to stricter transparency and accountability requirements. Currently, the country has over 100 state-owned enterprises with total assets worth over 11 trillion pesos. The Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or PCCI, signals leadership stability, retaining its board for a second consecutive year. PCCI President Nina Mangyo will continue her tenure, backed by Vice President Alegria Limhoco, Raymond Jude Aguilar, Brian Ang, and Michael Tan, son of Bilyonaryo Lucio Tan. Re-elected Chairman George Barcelon will also remain at the helm. Among the directors is Converge's CEO, Dennis Anthony Uy, who will lead PCCI's flagship event, the Philippine Business Conference, in 2025. Now, the Senate starts plenary discussions on a bill that seeks to renew the franchise of Meralco, led by Bilyonaryo Manny Pangilinan, for another 25 years. The House of Representatives already approved Meralco's franchise bid last November, but the Senate must pass a similar measure before it can become law. The bill's sponsor, Senator Joel Villanueva, emphasizes that millions of Filipinos rely on Meralco's continued service. He also highlighted a new provision in the bill requiring Meralco to appoint independent directors to its board, ensuring corporate policies align with both public and shareholder interests. Meralco's current franchise remains valid until 2028. On another front, Time magazine once again names U.S. President-elect Donald Trump as its Person of the Year, highlighting his impact on global affairs for better or for worse. To celebrate this honor, Trump rang the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange on Thursday. He was joined by his wife Melania, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, daughters Ivanka and Tiffany, and several of his cabinet nominations. He was first named Person of the Year in 2016 following his shocking presidential victory. This year's recognition underscores his unexpected political comeback and resurgence in American politics. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line.
Magandang gabi, ako si Corina Sanchez Rojas.
Magandang gabi, ako po si Pinky Webb.
Simulan na natin ang agenda.
Nasa radyo na, mapapanood, mapapakinggan.
94.7 FM.
Nahaharap ngayon ang Estados Unidos sa isa na namang 4 na taong Trump presidency.
Death squad rin yan. Binawi niya yung sinabi niya.
Ing masalimuot ang buwan ng Oktubre para sa ilang milyonaryo.
Sa bawat issue may anggulo at ang balita may agenda.
Two reasons why. I think the first one is I come from a rice farming background in Ilocos Norte. I have relatives that does rice farming and really saw the complexities that they saw every single day. And second is really my immersion in Singapore. Earlier this year, I went to Singapore and I interned for a startup that helped shrimp farmers manage the risks of disease testing in Vietnam. So having to understand that risks is the biggest, most vulnerable factors that affect farming, I tried to apply that in the Philippines and AgriConnect came to be.
The latest news, national issues, the political scene, and conversations with prominent personalities. All these firsthand at the forefront.
It's still continuing with hearings on the EJ.
But we can recommend the filing of cases with the proper offices or agencies.
It is always victimizing the poor, so we will continue to go against corruption in the budget.
At the forefront with attorney Karen Jimeno, 8 a.m.
Good morning, I'm Ferdy Salvador.
I'm Maiki Oreta, and welcome to Industry Beacon, where we shine a light on the trailblazers, the disruptors, and the industry leaders shaping our future. And in each episode, we'll explore how they're staying ahead in their respective fields, one industry at a time.
The industry changes quite rapidly.
We know where to go. We've got our comfort zone.
Those are early manifestations for the award.
I'm happy you told me that because now I know I'm not getting Alzheimer's.
Industry Beacon on BNC, the Billionario News Channel. At BNC, 12 noon doesn't mean break. But
good afternoon, I'm Mai Rodriguez. Today on Newsfeed at noon, staunch Duterte ally Salvador Panelo believes Vice President Sara Duterte will be impeached. United Nations hailing the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah. Australia officially banning children under 16 from social media. And those are the news this hour. Keep it here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel.
Ciao, mabuhay. You are watching The Word Exposed.
Prepare our hearts as we dive deeper into our faith and receive the strength from God's Word. Join Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle as he shares the reflection we need for the rest of the week.
We pray that the Word of God would find fulfillment in your life and His blessings be always upon you.
Every Sunday, 7 a.m. with replays at 3 p.m.
Good evening, I'm Pinky Webb. Tonight we ask the questions, what does the investigation cover? We tackle the issues.
The President's immunity from suit is absolute.
We clarify matters and we get on point.
Watch his press con
Sinabi niya na ayaw niya ng kudeta.
What is questionable about the AR, sir? The Vice President keeps insisting walang active threat kung hindi ako mamamatay.
Tignan na lang natin, mahirap pang pangunahan eh.
Pinky Web, on point.
Welcome back to Basis Points. Trading at the Philippine Stock Exchange opened just a few minutes ago. Let's take a look at the initial figures. Right now at 9:46 this morning, the PSE index is down sharply, down by 0.6% to 6602, back above the 6600 level. Earlier in the session, the PSE index had fallen below the 6600 level. So not a good start for the PSE index on this Friday morning. Taking a look at the all shares index, overall, I'm looking at a bloodbath here of sorts. Everything is in the red. All shares index down by 0.3% to 3745. The financials, industrial, holding firms, services, mining and oil and property counters are all in the red as well. Now, just to recap, the benchmark PSE index ended unchanged yesterday, even as global markets rallied, given tame inflation data from the U.S. So the PCCI was relatively unchanged yesterday at 66.41, but now it's extending its losses. Hopefully it stays above the 6600 level, but only time will tell. Now, the foreign exchange market, the peso opened slightly weaker at 58.25 against the dollar compared to its previous close of 58.24. Now, joining us to talk about the stock market and the top five and best and worst performers of the year to date on the Philippine Stock Exchange Index is Manny Ocampo, Senior Managing Director at Investment and Capital Corporation of the Philippines. Manny, welcome to the show.
Hi, morning, Maiki.
Good morning, Manny. The PSE index is at 6602. Earlier in the session, it had fallen to the 6500 level. Clearly, we're not getting the traction that we'd hoped for. Why is it that we're lagging behind our Asian peers? What's holding us back?
Well, Philippines, unfortunately, there are still the inflationary concerns given the recent typhoons that have hit us now. So we will seek guidance, I guess, from where the U.S. Fed will post, whether they do their anticipated 25 basis point rate cut next week. No, at about the same day when we find out U.S. Fed's action, the BSP will also be taking action or no action. I guess let me put it that way. No, on our own rates.
Given the inflation in the U.S., within expectations, and inflation here within expectations as well, are you pricing in a 25 basis point reduction for both the Fed and the BSP?
That's the default. I think people are maybe anticipating, do we look at a situation where BSP said, I'd rather be conservative and hold back, wait for where inflation comes out next year.
Now, earlier in the newscast, we had a story. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, right. They suggested listing state-owned firms on the Philippine Stock Exchange to help rev up our sluggish stock market. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, they really should, I think governments should positively look at that kind of recommendation. Unfortunately, SEC is maybe one. Department of Finance is maybe another of those agencies that will push for, something like that. But the line agencies that take care of the GOCCs, that's a different story, Mikey. No? Now, I think in yesterday's conference, the suggestion to take maybe land bank public, maybe it's something that should have been done a few years back, for land bank. Government should also take a look at, its property holdings. There are quite a few GOCCs that control large tracts of land that enter into 25-year, 50-year leases for these properties. And, these are all eligible for real estate investment trust, no, for them to recycle capital rather than wait for cash flows over the next 25, 50 years. No, they can encash that right away with by structuring REITs for their properties. No? Thirdly, maybe government should also take a look at the private sector corporations. It's granted concessions to tollways, waterways, even airports. Take a look at that. These are shall we say, public convenience matters, and the public would probably want to be part of or become shareholders of infrastructure that they go through every day.
Just an estimate, how much of an increase in market activity might we see from this, given that in the Philippines, over 100 state-owned firms with assets over more than 11 trillion pesos. How much upside could we see in the market?
Okay, based on what we're seeing, at least from some of the publicly available numbers, you're looking at upwards of maybe $10 billion in possible capital raise for these state-owned companies and private sector companies that have been granted concession.
And at the same time, these state-owned firms have the ability to improve their performance because it's going to be subject to stricter rules. So it sounds like a really interesting initiative. Okay, now moving on. Taking a look at the top 5 best performers year to date. So when we say year to date, we mean January until present day. Top of that list is Converge. Converge's shares are up 92%, meaning if you bought these shares in January of 2024, you'd have an upside of 92%. What do you think of this challenger brand? Do you think that it's going to be able to maintain this solid double-digit growth coming into 2025?
Okay. Converge, I think this year was if you'd like, a recovery year for them. They've posted very strong revenue and net income growth. I guess they've been able to reposition and really adapt into a market that has transitioned from a lockdown state to one that is more open already, where people are going back to work, etc. So they're providing new packages, new services to improve their revenue and bottom line. So that's quite interesting. They've improved net margins, for example, from 24% to 27% this year. Revenue growth at 14%, net income growth at 30%. So solid numbers behind them.
Solid numbers, up 96% year to date, and maybe perhaps more to come as connectivity is the basis for modern life. Moving down that list to number 2, up by about 0.5%. About 55% year to date is ICTSI, up by 60% as of today, or rather 60.1% year to date. They're capitalizing on growth opportunities globally. Are they well positioned for even more growth?
ICTSI will probably start, taking over a few more ports in the Philippines, so that solidifies their presence in the Philippines. Being made up of 7,100 islands, there's a lot more space that they can grow domestically.
All right, let's move along quickly so we get to cover more ground. Next is Metro Bank. Metro Bank up by about 50% year to date after its 9-month net income up 12% year on year. And they're going to benefit from lower interest rates, lower interest rate environment in 2025.
Yes, they are benefiting from that. And, Metro Bank has maybe recalibrated its focus on, on medium-sized businesses where they get better interest margins. They're not your traditional banks that rely maybe on trading income. So, they're more your traditional banks that rely on net interest margins rather than, forex trading or trading income and all that. So very solid. So again, their clientele is pretty much mid-markets and Filipino-Chinese accounts, and these have been growing steadily over the past year for Metrobank.
Yeah. Another solid firm, Century Pacific Food, 9-month net income up 14% year-on-year to 5.3 billion pesos. The stock is up 45.23% year-to-date on growth from its branded marine, meat, and milk segments. What do you think about this stock as we come into 2025?
Well, the management continues to do well with their branded products. So that has been very solid, and they've really been growing over the past, consistently over the past 5 years or so. Even during the pandemic, they were there, and now I think they're going on the targeting upper end markets as well.
Okay, moving on, let's take a look at the worst performers for the PSE index in 2024. And might they be able to turn this performance around as we come into the new year? Topping that list is Bloom, PSE's top laggards. Okay, this list is wrong. The top laggard is Bloomberry Resorts. Their shares are down as of yesterday by about 46.3%. This is another Razon-led firm, so he's got something that's up and he's got something that's down. Soler North, not an encouraging bet, no pun intended. Gaming volumes also declined in Entertainment City. What are your thoughts on this firm?
Well, maybe I think what Soler North did was to cannibalize maybe volume or traffic away from the established Soler in Entertainment City. I think what would have probably made sense if the other casino was maybe moved towards the Clark area, that would have probably been a better way for them to, spread out. But I guess the North and Entertainment City are just, it's unfortunately eating into each other's market. Now, you also have a situation where, I think across the board, we've seen a slowdown in the entry of high rollers into Metro Manila. That's a bit tricky. We hope that the volume picks up for Clark is actually encouraging. We've seen more volume come by that way, and that's because of access to the airport, etc. And new casinos growing up in that area.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Manny. That's all the time we have for this interview and for this show. So we'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Maiki.
And that's it for Basis Points. I'm Maiki Oreta. We'll be back next week for more news on the financial markets and more. Keep it here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel, always on top.